أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وخاتم النبيين وسيد المرسلين أبي القاسم محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين ولعن الله الدائم على أعدائهم أجمعين من يومنا هذا إلى قيام يوم الدين. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. Respected brothers, sisters, those who have gathered to mourn for Imam Hussein alayhi salam, salamun alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. On this day of Muharram, we convey our condolences to the Imam of our time, our living Imam, and we ask Allah to relieve his grieving heart, and we ask Allah to reward all of us for our participation in the majlis of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam. There are choices that we can make and options we might have, but the fact that we have tawfiq to be able to attend a majlis of Imam Hussein alayhi salam is something to be deeply grateful for. And inshallah, on the Day of Judgment, your participation with your good intentions in this program will be a source of great benefit for you and for all of us. Alhamdulillah, brothers and sisters, through the course of the last few evenings, we've had the chance to explore the topic of Saʿādah, inspired from the path of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. We said that Saʿādah is more than just a superficial and a shallow happiness. Saʿādah is deep happiness. Saʿādah is felicity. Saʿādah is living a life of blessedness and enjoying an eternity of blessedness in this world and in the hereafter. But the path towards Saʿādah is not something which always aligns with what might make somebody happy. Happiness can sometimes be a very fleeting, superficial happiness. Some people find happiness in listening to loud music. Some people find happiness in substance use, like drugs and alcohol. But we know that that looks like happiness, but deep inside it has a lot of sadness and harm. And this is why we need a framework that will guide us towards Saʿādah, towards true happiness, that all of us yearn for in our hearts. Over the last few nights, we've been examining this framework, and we've said that the word for that in Islamic terminology is taklif. Taklif is a system which is simple but very powerful. It puts the definition of the system and the details of it are in the hands of the one who created us. when He calls us to observe this system and to adhere to this system and to follow it and not to stray away from it, He's telling us the best way to live life. And this is what Imam Hussein alayhi salam wanted. When Imam Hussein alayhi salam says, "Inni la ara al-mawta illa sa'adatan wa lal hayata ma'a al-zalimina illa barama," he's saying that that framework of taklif is telling me that now is the time to go for it all, even if it means that my life is at stake. But before that, the previous 60 years of Imam Hussein's life, that same framework was telling him to live, and to live a life of Saʿādah, to live a life of dignity. And that's why in our ziyarat, when we address the likes of Ali Akbar alayhi salam, we say that عِشْتَ السَّعِيدَ وَمَضَيْتَ السَّعِيدَ. Ali Akbar and the likes of Ali Akbar and the Shuhada of Karbala, not only was their shahada a Saʿādah, not only was their martyrdom ultimate happiness, but their lives were ultimate happiness as well. Last night, we looked at the story of the sick man, the sick companion of the one who was ill, the companion of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, and he was complaining. He was saying that, his name was Marazim. Marazim was complaining, saying that my companion Muhammad is leaving me alone, and here I am, I'm sick, I need somebody to nurse me, somebody to take care of me. And from Muhammad's perspective, he thought that, well, this is ibadah in the mosque of the Prophet, maybe this is better. So they got it clarified. They went to Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam said that had you sat next to your friend and tended to his needs, that would have been better for you than going to the mosque of the Prophet. Just to summarize before we move on for today, the few lessons that we learned from yesterday, one of them is that one of the pathways to Saʿādah is to find that taklif which involves a type of ithar, a type of giving from oneself and generosity. When we look at something and it's all about me, right? It's centered around the self, then we have to question ourselves. We're like, wait a minute, is that really my taklif when it's so self-centered? Not that Islam says ignore your needs. No, of course. Right? If you can't function as an abd of Allah if you're not taking care of your needs. But it's those tricky situations where sometimes shaitan comes and says, do this. And actually, it's just in a guise of focusing on the self and ignoring the needs of others. And one of the pathways to Saʿādah and true happiness is sakha, or a type of generosity and generous spirit. Another lesson that we learned from yesterday is not to be what's called Abdul Hal. Abdul Hal meaning that I base everything based on my feelings. You know, these days we're in the world of emojis, right? Even when you're communicating, you know, they say a picture is worth 1,000 words. So sometimes it's very common, instead of, you know, saying words, we use like pictures. Now, nothing wrong with that, but it's interesting how a lot of times when we're using, let's say, emojis as responding, a lot of times we're responding on the basis of emotion. There's a lot of focus on what do you feel like right now, or what do you feel like, how do you feel in response to this or in response to that. Nothing wrong with it, but when our emotions become the source of our action, this is where it can become problematic. We become Abdul Hal. I don't feel like doing that. I don't feel like holding my tongue. I don't feel like being patient. I don't feel like being respectful. Well, these are the cases of where very tricky, very dangerous. Right? I'm basing it off of my hal, not off of Allah. We want to be Abdullah, not Abdul Hal. So inshallah, keeping that in mind, we're going to continue our discussion of Saʿādah. Inshallah, you can help me with a beautiful united salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Brothers and sisters, one of the pathways to Saʿādah is by having excellent relationships with those around us. I'm going to give you a couple of ahadith, and we're going to go into this in some detail. One of the hadiths is narrated from Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. He says, من سعادة المرء حسن الخلق ومن شقاوته سوء الخلق. He says that there's two sides of the coin. Either you're on the path of true happiness or you're on the path of wretchedness and misery. The path to true happiness is when your khulq and your behavior with others, the way you treat other people, is characterized by husn. It's excellent. It's good. And the path to wretchedness and misery is when our interactions with others is characterized by su, meaning that it's something which is evil. So this is a key. It's a very important clue that we have about how to attain Saʿādah. I'll give you another hadith. This is again from Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. He says, "Fi luzum al-haqqi takunu as-sa'ada." If you want to attain true happiness, you get there by having luzum al-haqq. Okay, luzum al-haqq means that luzum means you stick to something. You never separate from it. Luzum al-haqq means that you never separate from the truth. Now what does that mean? Agha Gulpaygani, the one who has written the Sharh of Ghurr al-Hikam, he says that this luzum al-haqq has three meanings. Number one is that we stick to the religion of truth. Okay, number one, that's a way of attaining happiness, true happiness. Number two, he says that when we have our beliefs are purified from falsehood, right? We believe what is true. This is number two in terms of being able to attain true happiness. And three is when we observe the huquq of those around us, meaning that if you want to be sticking to the path of haqq, then you realize that part of the system of taklif is that Allah has designed it in a way where there are people who have rights. And those rights are our obligation to observe. Now this is where I want to pause here and say that this concept of huquq and rights is extremely important in today's day and age. A few nights ago I said that I use this acronym KISS, keep it simple. And I said that when we try to make things self-styled, we approach it in our own way, we make things complicated, that's when we get into a lot of difficulties. These days you see that unfortunately people have a lot of conflict. We have conflict within marriages, we have conflict between father and mother, we have conflict between mother and son and father and daughter and etc., and brother and cousin and friends who are now enemies. Sometimes the approach that's taken to these is by starting to label. I can't tell you how many times in recent months I've heard this statement that my mother is a narcissist, my husband is a narcissist, my wife is a narcissist, right? Meaning that they see a few things that they don't like from this person and they start to label them. They're this, they're that, right? And then they might even sometimes, literally they'll go on ChatGPT and they say, how do I deal with a narcissist? And then the ChatGPT will give them the techniques. So it'll be like, oh, I don't know, one of them was telling me something about using a certain, anyway, they have these terminologies for these approaches to how to deal with narcissists. And then this becomes a thing. That yeah, I'm dealing with my mom who's a narcissist and this is the approach I'm taking. And I know, and this is from a conversation, I know that when she says this, she really means this right here. Now, brothers and sisters, imagine you go through life and you're always second guessing people on what they're saying and what they're doing. Life becomes really complicated. You can see how the path to Saʿādah is one where we don't have to deal with all these things, but instead we keep it simple. We say, what is our taklif? And what are the huquq of the people around us? That's why the hadith says, min sa'adatil mar'i luzumul haqq, meaning that we stick to the path of knowing the truth and observing the huquq of other people around us, the rights of other people around us. With that in mind, I want to go to the story for today. Every night we've been choosing a story which we're centering our discussion around, and these stories are, again, clues on how to live a life of Saʿādah. Please recite salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. This story is from the life and times of our beloved Imam al-Hadi al-Naqi alayhi salam. In this story, Imam Hadi alayhi salam is in Samarra. And it just so happens that in the streets of Samarra, there is somebody by the name of Ja'far ibn al-Qasim al-Hashimi al-Kufi. Ja'far is an elderly man. He used to be a companion of Imam Kadhim alayhi salam. Now we're at the time of the 10th Imam, but Ja'far was a companion of the 7th Imam alayhi salam. But what happened was that when the 7th Imam alayhi salam became martyred, there were a group of individuals who did not take the Imam after him. They did waqf, they stopped. And they said that after Imam Kadhim alayhi salam, there is nobody after him. He didn't appoint a successor. So what happened was that he was one of them. Sometimes what they did is, it's a very sad type of history. Sometimes even the khums money that some of them had collected as a representative of the Imam alayhi salam, they saw that in their minds no one had been appointed, so they kept it for themselves. So what happened now is this Ja'far is walking in the streets of Samarra, and Imam Hadi alayhi salam sees him. Now he recognizes him, and he knows that he is in a way an enemy of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, in the sense that he did not accept the imama of the Imams after Imam Kadhim alayhi salam. So what are the options here? Option number one would be to ignore him completely. Option number two would be to say something that would kind of, let's say, show that a type of bara'ah of him, and say that I don't want anything to do with him. He's the one who rejected my grandfather, and he did all these things, and he took the path of batil. He's not on the path of haqq. But it's very interesting the way that Imam Hadi alayhi salam deals with Ja'far. What does he say to him? He asks him when he sees him, he says, "Ila kam hadhihi an-nawma?" Ila kam hadhihi, meaning, tell me, how long are you going to be asleep for? Ama ana laka an tatanabbaha minha? Has it not come time that you wake up from your sleep? Can't you just wake up already? But in a very polite way. That's a little bit, in English translated a little bit maybe rudely. But it's very respectful, right? Hasn't it come time for you to become awake from the slumber that you have fallen into? Now, it's very interesting what happens afterwards. The same Ja'far, who's an elderly man, right? For years, he had been separated from the path of the imama. He tells his companion that when he's narrating the story, he says that I was walking in the streets, I heard these words from Ali ibn Muhammad, meaning Imam Hadi alayhi salam. And when I heard those words, it was as if something hit my heart deeply inside. And some of the narrations say that at that time I fainted. And what happens after that? He says that I وَاتَّبَعْتُ الْحَقِّ. After that, I started following the haqq. I found the path of truth. What did it take? It took 2 sentences of the Imam alayhi salam for this man to completely transform. Now, why am I using this as an example? Because, respected brothers and sisters, one of the things we know about Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam is, number one, we say it to them, kalamukum nur. Your words are light. Okay? Not just that they are words of truth, or they're beautiful words, or they're elegant words, but their words are light, meaning that if somebody is in darkness, in spiritual darkness, the words of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam themselves can transform that person. And this is an example in history, but something that you can try and test yourselves. Sometimes you might feel a little bit down or in difficulty or distress. I encourage you, you open up one of the 15 whispered prayers of Imam Sajjad alayhi salam, and even take half of it and just read it, but read it properly. Read it with the open heart. And just see what happens. Test this out. Test out this hypothesis that is it the case, kalamukum nur? Right? And you just see yourselves what sort of miracles can happen with the words of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam. The other thing, one of the other lines from that ziyarah, which is known as Ziyarah al-Jami'a al-Kabira, is Sajiyatukum al-Karam. That the way that you deal with people, if you want to use one word that characterizes the relationship strategy of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam, whether it be with their family members, whether it be with their friends, whether it be with people in general, whether it be with those who they know are in opposition to them, it's Sajiyatukum al-Karam. The way you deal with people is dignity and honoring them. So one of the interesting things that we're told in our hadith literature, brothers and sisters, is that if we want to attain Saʿādah, then we need to combine these different concepts. We need to combine the concept of taklif. We need to combine the concept of huquq, observing the rights of others, and we need to combine the concept of karama, in treating other people in an honored and dignified and respectable manner. So inshallah, what I'd like to do is spend some time on this, because when I'm choosing topics to speak about, I'm looking at the issues that, at least in my community, with the people I interact with, that we're facing, and trying to understand what are the root problems of this. And the hope is that experiences will transfer. Maybe some of those things that we're experiencing can be transferred here as well. Inshallah, we can benefit. Please recite salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So, brothers and sisters, one of the things that we know about us as human beings is that Allah created us in a dignified manner. We also know that when people treat each other in an undignified way, and specifically what I mean here is, for example, you have parents who are constantly, let's say, ripping apart their children, or children who are constantly disrespecting their parents, or etc., etc. You can fill in the blank. One of the things that we know is that the root problem of these issues almost always lies in a type of indignity or lack of dignity. I'm speaking on the basis of experience as well. Having been, alhamdulillah, I have the honor of being in Islamic schools for the last 12 years. Every day, pretty much spending time with children, seeing different children, seeing the struggles that they face. And it's one of those things which it's very interesting that the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, they themselves have told us about this connection. That when you have people treating other people in an undignified way, it goes back to a lack of self-dignity. Okay, I'll give you a couple of hadith here. We have one from Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. He says, مَا تَكَبَّرَ إِلَّا وَضِيعَ وَمَا تَوَاضَعَ إِلَّا رَفِيعَ. The reason why somebody treats somebody in an arrogant way is only because inside of themselves they feel low and undignified. And the reason why somebody does tawadu means being humble. Tawadu means that we act the way we ought to, in a dignified way. We put ourselves in the place we ought to put ourselves. That is because of a sense of raf'a, and a sense of feeling elevated in a noble way within. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, similarly, he says that ما من رجل تجبر أو تكبر إلا لذلة وجدها في نفسه. He says that whenever there is somebody who is rough with other people, they treat them in a harsh manner, or they treat them in a way where they humiliate them, they're arrogant towards them, they shame them, that is because of a type of dhillah, a type of indignity and shame that they feel within themselves. And I'm telling you that sometimes you discover things, the truth of things, through experience. I can't tell you how many times this thing has come true. Sometimes, for example, somebody will complain, a spouse will complain and say that my spouse, is always acting like they know it all, and always acting like arrogant towards me, and always telling me what to do, and always making fun of me and taunting me and these things, right? Sometimes I'll say that maybe your spouse actually feels within themselves, they feel kind of low. they don't feel dignity within. And then they'll say that, no, I think they're fine, right? I think that they feel themselves, they feel very confident of themselves. I said, just wait, right? And then sometime later they'll come back and they'll say, you're right, right? And this is based on the hadith. That person actually within themselves, deep inside, they have a sense of lack of dignity. So I want to address this question here, that why is it that we should feel dignity, right? Why should we feel rafi'a in a good way? I'm not talking about being arrogant. Why should we feel dignified? This is very important because there's a whole program in place right now to get ourselves to doubt who we are and how dignified we are, especially in societies where we're the minority, right? Sometimes we just assume by default that we're second rate, we're second class. It's very important for us to understand that this is a type of falsehood that sometimes we've adopted and we've accepted. What we know from the teachings of the Quran and the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam is that Allah created us in a way that we are dignified. Okay, this is from the Quran itself. Allah Ta'ala says that all of Bani Adam, Allah created them in a way where He honored them. He honored them. He dignified them. And He says you can look at yourselves and compare yourself to other creations of Allah. Don't you see how it is that other, for example, animals, other plants, right, other beings, none of them has access to what you have access to. In fact, you are so dignified that Allah placed the entire earth and everything in it at your disposal. وَسَخَّرَ لَكُم مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ. This is very important for us to understand that when Allah honors us in this way, it's for everyone. Look at what Amir al-Mu'mineen in Islam, one time there was an old man who was from a different faith. And this was in the government of Imam Ali Islam. You probably heard this story before, it's interesting. This old man was begging. And when Amir al-Mu'mineen Islam sees this, right, what does he say? Does he say, oh, that person, he's not a Muslim, right? We don't need to really comment on that. Let him beg. No. Amir al-Mu'mineen Islam, he's upset by that. He says that, look at this old man, you make use of him his whole life. Here he is serving his family, serving the society, serving the community, and now in his old age, you leave him alone? He orders that that old man be given from the treasury and that he doesn't want to see him begging. Why? Because human beings have inherent dignity. We're not just like that. We're the ones that everything else has been created for. We're Khalifatullah. We're the representative of Allah on the earth. You know who it is that tells us that we're not worthy? The Quran tells us that it is Iblis and the forces of Iblis who would like us to believe that we are not worthy. This is very important. I'll give you some of the ayat. Please recite salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. In the Quran, in Surah Al-Hijr, Allah says, when quoting Iblis and what he said, he says, خَلَقْتَنِي مِن نَارٍ وَخَلَقْتَهُ مِن طِينٍ. He says, you created me from fire and you created him from clay. So what is Iblis's logic? He says that because of my physical creation from fire, I'm better than that human being who's made out of this thing physically. Meaning what? Meaning that Iblis is reducing the value of a human being to his outward body. Now this is dangerous. Because when Allah creates a human being, He says what? He says, وَنَفَخْتُ فِيهِ مِن رُوحِي فَقَعُوا لَهُ سَاجِدِينَ. He doesn't tell the angels that خَلَقْتُهُ مِن طِينٍ فَقَعُوا لَهُ سَاجِدِينَ. It doesn't say that, I created the human being from clay, now you should go and do sajda to him. He says, نَفَخْتُ فِيهِ مِن رُوحِي فَقَعُوا لَهُ سَاجِدِينَ. Because the human being has the ruh of Allah, his or her spirit is connected to Allah, that's why the human being has value. That's why the angels have to acknowledge and humiliate themselves towards the value of a human being. Now, what are we told when we go to social media, right? Especially when it's very visual based, and this is a real issue. We say that, oh, look at that person, look at how beautiful they are, and look at me, and here I am. therefore that person is better than me and my value is so small. This is completely opposite from the logic of Quran. The Quran says that don't look at the physical creation to understand the value of a human being. وَنَفَخْتُ فِيهِ مِنْ رُوحِي. Look at the spiritual dimension of this human being. They're magnificent in terms of their potential. So what does shaitan do? Shaitan says, I am better than you, you are lowly. Shaitan says that I will not respect you. Right? I respect myself, I'm not going to respect you. Shaitan will say that I'm not going to give you the dignity that Allah created you for. Right? When Shaitan is commanded to, bow to Adam, he says no. What do sometimes we do with our own family members? Okay, now this is getting into like some practicality here. Sometimes you hear in some homes, right, that you have different approaches to dealing with family members, especially children. We hear things like, for example, that you are good for nothing. No one likes you. Why do you always do that? You're such a crybaby. Right? All these type of sayings. And so many other type of approaches that we have that sometimes are taken in the home. Let me give you specifically some examples of the ways that sometimes, just as an example, parents might deal with children. One of them, I'll give you 3 ways. Number 1 is that they are overly controlling. You have parents who, for example, will not let their child do anything. They're always hovering around them. They are scared that the child will even trip or anything. You have parents who are very mean to their children. They're always yelling at them. They're always shaming them. They're always getting angry at them. And then you have parents who are overly passive. What do? They just are not involved with their children's lives. Sometimes I feel like crying when I hear about homes where even on the dinner table, first of all, it's rare that the family will eat dinner together. But even when they have dinner together, everyone's on their own device, doing their own thing. When they fall asleep, everyone has their own device, doing their own thing. When they wake up in the morning, sometimes I hear these stories of children that they walk around with their iPads, they go to sleep with their iPads, they fall asleep with their iPads on their chest, they wake up in the morning to their iPads. This is the life of some modern homes. This is very sad, right? This passive type of parenting where the parents are not connected with their children. Now, you know what's interesting, brothers and sisters? Whether in a home, the family has the approach of shaming and raging and getting angry, or they have the approach of being overly controlling, or they have the approach of being passive, all 3 of these approaches teach one thing to the child, which is that you are not dignified. You're not worthy. And this is exactly the technique of shaitan. Shaitan does the same thing. He says that, okay, I don't see you as having the value that God gave you. And therefore, I'm going to treat you the way I want to treat you. Right? This is the approach of shaitan. If we want to attain Saʿādah, which inshallah we're all looking for, we have to address it at the root cause, which is how do we see other people? And how do we deal with them as a result? You see, when Imam Hadi alayhi salam sees this person, he could have treated him as an enemy. He could have crushed him. But that's the path of Iblis. That's the path of Fir'aun. Fir'aun, what does he do? He says, فَاسْتَخَفَّ قَوْمَهُ فَأَطَاعُوهُ. Fir'aun didn't give them the respect. He shamed them, humiliated them. He used techniques of threats. And what happened is that as a result, they obeyed him. But is that the path of dignity? No. That doesn't lead to success. Please say salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So brothers and sisters, just to summarize, number 1 is that Allah created us with dignity. Number 2 is that if I am having difficulty in respecting those around me, I need to question myself that first of all, do I see myself in a dignified manner? Maybe I was raised in one of those homes where I was always crushed, or I was left alone, or I was overly controlled, and therefore I don't have dignity within. So I need to use this opportunity to reflect on this and say that despite whatever other people said, Allah created me in a way that I'm dignified. He gave me a soul. He believes in me. He gave me so much opportunity, so many blessings. And we need to treat other people on the basis of karama, give them that dignity that they need. We're told in hadith, Man akrama akhahu fa innama yukrimullah, that when somebody respects and treats their fellow believer with dignity, they are dignifying Allah. And then the hadith continues and says that, do you know, can you even guess what happens as a reward for the person who honors Allah? Right? So just let's think about this when it comes to our interaction with especially our family members and our friends, and learn from the example of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam. Inshallah, if Allah gives us the tawfiq, I want to go into this in even more detail, and I want to start to list out some of those huquq that we talked about. Alzamil haq, right? The idea of sticking with the haq. What are some of those rights that are part of our taklif that we must observe if we want to have Saʿādah? Saʿādah in our homes, Saʿādah in our relationships, right? Inshallah, if Allah gives us tawfiq, in the upcoming nights, I will get a chance to explore that. But to conclude tonight's lecture, I want to give an example from the dignity of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Please recite salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Earlier, I quoted the line from Ziyad al-Jami' al-Kabira, Sajiyatukum al-Karam, that the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, if you wanted to encapsulate the way they would treat others, their sajiyah, overall, their pattern of conduct, the one word that Imam Hadi alayhi salam gives us in the Ziyar Jamia is karam. They would deal with others on the basis of honor and dignity. There was a story that last night our dear brother Ibrahim, he was narrating this story, and alhamdulillah we had the opportunity to listen to it and inshallah reflect and cry and learn and grow as a result. It was a story of Al-Hurr. But I want to focus on one part of this story. We know that Hurr was experiencing a deep sense of shame. He says that I am the one who has caused fear to enter into the hearts of the children of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. These are the children of the Prophet. And here I am, and I'm standing here. What more guilt could somebody experience at that time? And the narrations, some of them say that he came with his hand on his head, as if he's somebody who's just broken, so shamed. Imam Hussein alayhi salam is Ahlul Karam. He is the one who deals with people in a dignified manner. And we see in the narration that Imam Hussein alayhi salam sees Hurr. He doesn't take that opportunity to go and further make him feel guilty for what he did. He doesn't use that opportunity to blame him for the fact that his children are now crying out of thirst. But he sees this as an opportunity to restore the dignity that a human being must have. And he immediately tells him that لَقَدْ تَابَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْكَ يَا حُرْ. And we see at the end of the story, Hurr had been martyred. Hurr's face is now covered in dirt. Hurr is going to be buried in the dirt. But Imam Hussein alayhi salam realizes this is somebody who needs to be dignified even in his death. So you see Imam Hussein alayhi salam wiping the dust and the dirt from the face of Al-Hurr. And he's saying that, Anta al-Hurr kama samatka ummuk. Indeed, you are the one who's free the way your mother named you. This is a message for all of us, brothers and sisters. If we want to uplift others, if we want to treat them with dignity, we have to do so not just thinking that they did this to me or they did that to me. We have to look past that and say, this is a human being. that Allah has created with dignity and honor. I must dignify them and honor them, and in doing so we can find true Saʿādah. May Allah help us to perform our responsibilities, know our taklif, and inshallah grow closer to Him. May Allah hasten the reappearance of the Imam of our time. May Allah help all those who are suffering and those who are oppressed, those who are under attack, especially our dear brothers and sisters in Palestine, in Lebanon, in other places. We ask Allah Ta'ala to protect them and to give them courage and strength and determination in their resistance against the aggressors. And we ask Allah Ta'ala to give them the ultimate victory with the barakah of as-salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.